Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video about the end of Western domination and why that is not a bad thing, in fact, a good thing, and also why that is inevitable, cannot be avoided. It is happening, and we have to adjust to that. We have to prepare for that. Well, not really prepare. We have to just go through it and adjust while it is happening. And everybody has to adjust to it. Inside the West and outside of it, all of its colonies, such as we in Hawaii under the U.S. Western domination. So, I want to kind of focus today on this kind of topic in light of a lot of recent events this week. So many, it's hard to keep track of, but I'll try to keep this on the topic as much as possible and focus in on what that looks like. It's just a massive topic. I can't really cover every single aspect of it. I don't want to go through the entire history of world history for the last several thousand years when we talk about the West, because this, in a historical sense, this goes back well beyond, the last, some people will talk about the unipolar moment of U.S. Planetary hegemony, if you count the Cold War as an East-West struggle with that's where the third world comes from. Is the world outside the collective West and the Soviet Union, and the third world was basically the global South Africa, Central South America, a lot of the Arab world, a lot of Southeast Asia, and so the West in that context for the last the post World War II era, it's the end of that period of was at the end of the unipolar moment, meaning like a single entity, a single country, the United States, a single power structure, the United States, and in particular, it's Washington D.C. It's Wall Street dominating world affairs. And then before that, there was the bipolar, I guess you could call it bipolar moment, the Cold War. And in one sense, it's the end of that whole Cold War, plus the last 40 years of that unipolar U.S. hegemonic period. But in a greater sense, this goes way back. I was recently listening to from a Russian Eastern analytic perspective. I think it's former naval officer for the Russian military, Marchanov. He lives in the United States now, and he writes about what's happening. But he talked about we're in the Eastern perspective, we are in a 1,000 year, once a millennium scale of shift. Potentially, I would say, as a native Hawaiian, I would say it could go much further than that. Maybe 2 millennium shift. Depending on how you look at it, it's gonna be it's for the what's called if you talk about the West, like I should probably define some of these terms, right? The West is came to be described as the western end of the Eurasian continent, or Europe. It's Europe itself is kind of a newer conception, but if you think of the West as obviously Britain, France, it gets a little more gray in the spectrum outside of that. But obviously, the United States, all of the settler colonies that have come from the colonialist, imperialist Britain and France, the U.S., Australia, New Zealand, of course, Japan sometimes get incorporated in there, and so so we're talking about. It's not like a strict definition, but it's generally like the forces that go with the colonialists, the capitalists, of course, the white supremacists, exceptionalist, Christendom. Europe has this kind of collective identity that it's a fuzzy concept, because a lot of it is obviously constructed, manipulated, and it exists in a large extent as an illusion, or it exists in a constructed Hollywood fiction, or before Hollywood, it exists in a constructed book fiction, or the fiction of the priest or the pastor in the 1600s, British or French, Catholic or Protestant narrative, right? But these are all kind of like deeply fraudulent narratives about themselves and about the world and who the West is, right, with respect to everyone else. I mean, usually we are the best, we are right, we are the good, we are the light, they are the dark, they are the evil, they're demons, like native people, African people, everybody south of Europe, south of Spain and France, and these are demons, these are evil, these are bad, these are the darkness, right? So the West like defines itself, right, against this is one definite characteristic of the West that unifies them, which is that they define themselves as above, superior to, greater than the example for, in all ways, moral, social, cultural, political, economic, technological, whether they actually are or not, like whether Britain was technologically superior or culturally superior to China in, like I say, 1,000 years ago, is false, right? Or 500 years ago is false, because China had paper and gunpowder before them. But the internal narrative is that we are better, we deserve dominion, and they'll often quote the Bible, that the King James specific Bible, which is a misinterpreted, again, illusory history. It is a constructed history that warps who the Palestinian anti-colonial, anti-Western resistor, right? Because Jesus was a Easterner relative to the then Romans, right? Who he was resisting, much like the United States in ISRAE, with their ISRAEL on the watermelon place today. Jesus was from the watermelon place. And so they took that actual history of what he did, which was resist empire and a supremacist Western system, and then the British, the King James Bible, the Roman Bible, the Spanish, the French, all the story that they constructed was about how they were actually the good guys that whole time, and used the weapon they used. The torture device, right? The torment nexus, in the for the science fiction nerds, the torment nexus of the West, and the torment device, right? That was the cross that they used to torture Jesus became reworked, and again, it's the West has really only mastered storytelling, right? Fraudulent, fake, illusory history. Voltaire called it illusory history, right? He was one person. After he criticized the then Western, the then Western power structure under the absolute monarch, the Sun King Louis XIV, he was punished and put into exile. He was put into the stocks at one point. He was put in exile. So for speaking the truth in the West, it is the actual truth, right? Not the fraudulent, illusory history. You are punished, right? Because there are always people who there are always people who will be truth-sayers, whether that's, an Assange or a Daniel Hale whistleblower, put in a deep, dark cave, sentenced to years in prison. Chelsea Manning, Scott Ritter is American, deeply, he's like a Republican American ex-military person who just wanted to stop weapons and nuclear weapons and needless bloodshed for not even because he's like a deeply Western person actually, right? But then he has he doesn't follow the West, and because he wants to tell the truth, right? But the West is for thousands of years premised upon lying to yourself and to all your people, right? in every way, right? From the pulpit, from the priest's altar, from the New York Times, from the newspaper, right? From the speeches, from the dinner table discussions where you echo the lies of your own supremacy, and making everything you do seem good, even though it's evil, and making everything the other person does that's that's actually good as non-existent, and making them seem evil, right? And so in every way, Western culture is infinite mastery of lying. Not really anything other than that. Not military supremacy, not Texas. It's paper tigers, as our good friend from the East would say. They're paper tigers. They're not good at military supremacy. The Ansar Allah, sometimes called the Houthis, are disproving that now with Mach 8 hypersonic missiles taking out and drones as the poorest Arab country, taking down all of the United States aircraft carriers. They're running away. The battleships are getting sunk. You sunk my battleship, right? So the West has never, ever had any of this so-called supremacy that it has claimed. But it continues to claim that to itself, right? That's the defining, that is Western culture, right? That's also white culture, saying that everything that we did was great. And when a non-white person does that, or African people deserve to be enslaved because, they're just genetically predisposed to that, or some confluence of made up nonsense. Right. But that's what unites all of the history of the last several thousand years of this area, that includes Greece, Rome, in the Antiquities era, the British, the French, the Americans, that root themselves back in that, great Western Western legacy, like which way Western man, right? It's like you should, you should look inward, Western man, and actually address and right the wrongs that you have committed, and stop continuing to do those, right? Self-reflection, right? Not external expansion would be, I mean, that's one way that we, as I said, I was going to talk about how to adjust to this period of the end of this, right? The end of the West. It's really the end of the West. And that doesn't mean like all the people are going to die in a conventional or nuclear war necessarily. That's not actually how things changed. Necessarily. In fact, you could go through a nuclear war and come out the other side and still not have changed at all. That's what Fallout's about. Going into a bunker, the West goes into a bunker, kills 90% of the population, comes back out, and then continues doing what it was doing. So that doesn't actually change things, right? And I don't think that's actually what's going to change things, right? It's internal self-reflection. And also like listening to the people and your relatives that you have been harming, and the planet that you've been harming the entire time. And, the native peoples of the world, the global South, peoples of Africa, Asia, Latin America, Native Americans, Native Hawaiians, etc., who have Puerto Ricans, along with other U.S. colonies, forced pretend like we don't have them colonies, but calling them territories, right? But that's another way to not listen to those people that you're harming, who are trying to tell you this. Native people who also have the solutions to climate change and the harm that's being caused to animals and to plants and to all of our non-human relatives, or what as we Native Hawaiians would call it, the Aina, right? So the ability to listen to that and then try to make changes. But you see, like the Western culture, the Western mindset preempts the ability to make changes. Some people say, like, why is the U.S. and NATO continuing, and the U.S. and its allies continuing these ridiculous self-defeating wars, right? The U.S. just this week, one thing they're doing is they're going to start basically a draft. It's selective service, right? They're kind of slowly, slippery sloping it in, right? The U.S. wants to try. I mean, whether it succeeds or not is another thing, but they have instituted. There's a bill going through in the United States government for selective service, basically meaning like you will automatically be signed up to go into the U.S. military, Army, Marines, Air Force, Navy, right? All 18 to 25-year-olds, I believe. You'd be automatically signed up for this, because you used to have to voluntarily sign up. Now this is like, this is really like, it's really like testing the waters, because the United States doesn't have it doesn't have the ability to fight and win basically any significant war anywhere against the poorest Arab country of Yemen, against the axis of resistance in Palestine. It's losing there. It's little settler colony. It's Genocidal settler colony, right, in West Asia is falling apart there. They're losing morally. They're losing culturally. They're losing psychologically. The world is turned against the West over this, even more so than they had before. The global majority is, all the major players in the world, which is not the West, is not the major player. It's the dangerous entity, but it's not the major economic, even military player. It's not the major cultural player. It's not the major technological player, right? It's falling apart over this ongoing child mass unaliving, right? Everybody watching it on their phones. I mean, anybody who is connected to reality and not like hanging out in some alternate universe in corporate Western media, right? Which again, Western media, right, that lies all the time, right, is just the extension of Roman media, right? That said that we were the good people, right? It's an extension of Greek media. It's Aristotle's speeches were the Western media of that time. Aristotle gave speeches where he said that we deserve, it's natural, and it is the order of the universe that the Afro and Asiatic peoples, harvest our grapes, farm our olives, and we, as the great Western man, we don't do that, because and then there's a long philosophical, Western philosophy is the original New York Times propaganda. Western philosophy begot the King James Bible, the Roman Bible. Paul was a Western, right, propagandist. But it's about rapidly constructing and misconstruing and warping together, right, patching together all kind of lies and half truths to make something that's somewhat believable, right? They actually have done studies on this. Is that the average elite U.S. university graduate, military, you're talking about Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and also just average U.S. college Western college graduate, you can argue something like, why we need these environmental protections, and then you can argue the complete opposite, why we should not use them. Within like 2 minutes, you can argue in one direction, and then the average Western college, including elite college graduate, will agree with you, and we'll repeat that, and then 2 minutes later you can flip and argue like basically the complete opposite, and they'll have completely flipped their position, right? And you don't even need to use like, and I think they did this test with like using actual using a lot of like made up statistics, right? And what that tells you is that the Western, I mean, some people are like, well, that's like a failure of the education system. Yes, I mean, but this is also kind of like, this is what the Western mind itself, the Western culture, Western even language, right? The word civilization is not a nonsense word, because civilization is defined in the most prominent international Western organizations like the UN as civilized countries. Civilizations are defined as Britain, France. In the UN, and it's a nonsensical document because it says civilized countries don't commit genocide, and it lists the civilized countries as Britain, France, United States, Canada, Australia, right? All the biggest Genocide. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to say that. All the biggest, right, human rights violators are listed as the civilized countries that are supposed to be not doing that, right? So this is the paramount to the entire Western world, right? They go back to, they talk about human rights violations all the time, how their freedom and democracy and their human rights are so great, and that's why they're the best places ever, right? Europe, United States, Canada, these are the best places ever, with the greatest, worst human rights records, animal rights violations records, environmental rights regulations records, war, wars of aggression, genocide, slavery, ecocide, you name it, right? Bioweapons usage, chemical weapons usage. I mean, all across the planet for centuries, right? And then ongoing on your screen. You can watch it happening right now. This is why it's really changing now, is because you can watch it. It's really because the East has technology to mass out communicate, and also they're economically and technologically come out of the period of humiliation, right? And so the ability for the West to mass lie, to control the means of mass narrative construction, mass disinformation, right, which is the basis for the entire Western world and mind, right, that constructs that the Western experience, or the Western subject, the Western person, the Western population, right, in which the consensus reality of all of history, what is good, what is bad, who is good, what is right and wrong, right, and what the world consists of, what happened during World War II. All of this is nonsense, right? And it has to that the United States and the Britain and France, they did all the fighting and they saved the world. They didn't. It was the Russians, actually, the same ones that are fighting the Yahtzees with an N now, right? So that all of that is part of the multi-thousand-year giant Himalaya-sized, Mount Everest-sized, just mega landfill of lies upon lies, strata upon strata upon strata of lies upon lies upon lies that self-reinforce. And anytime somebody contradicts you, right, then you have this huge, like, Library of Alexandria of lies, right, to reach back into. Oh, well, we took that we took that native land fair and square, and you weren't using it anyway, right? You have Terran. I mean, there's like a whole, right. Well, we won World War II. We had to do, and so that's why we deserve to run the entire world. America, we had Martin Luther King, and that means that racism's over. Like, just all of these things you could reach back into. Never mind that the United States government killed him. I'm sorry, unalived him. Right? So this digital mass disinformation, by stopping, actual oppressed people like myself from saying the truth to the Western, the Western Caucasoid dude's mind, right? If I say that, then it's like, well, you can't even say that because they might look into that and then, like, come to other conclusions about, what they might look into that truth, right? That's why Scott Ritter had his passport taken and he was stopped from getting on a plane to go give a speech and make a video about, why we should make peace with Russia and stop this needless warfare, and et cetera, and he's just a weird one because he's a westernized mind, right? I would argue that's because probably on the spectrum, because you have a difficulty maintaining all of these lies together and nonsense in your head. You're like, no, it has to make sense. I can't hold 50 different incoherent lies and fabricated realities, right, in my head. It's like the Western mind is like a Franken mind. The Western mind is like a patchwork of like 50 different stolen Van Goghs and bits of somebody's scratch paper, and you just like rip it up into pieces, right? And you kind of stitch that back together into something, right? It's like the hack real estate developer, mediocre loser dude, right? Who is the manager, and Big Eyes, right? He's like managing his wife, who is like an actual artist who actually knows how to paint, right? It's like what generative AI is. There's a bunch of mediocre venture bro capitalists trying to mad that they can't actually do art and paint because they haven't put any time into getting that skill, trying to steal imagine that guy, right? That's doesn't really know how to do anything except BS, right? Because that's Western culture, right? Just like make up stuff, right? And he's really good at making up lies, like, oh yes, this is my art and this is my name, and he BS's his way, right? You can watch him do it for 4 hours straight. He just like when he's in that trial, right, trying to get it to lie his way out of having to paint an actual, this kind of surreal Big Eyes style picture, right? But he's really good at just BSing, like lying. He lies for 4 hours, and then finally he says, I can't paint. He says, I have to go drink water. Oh, this is not the right brush. Oh, well, the paper, the canvas is not right. The light's wrong, right? He just keeps on. None of that is true, right? He just can't paint, but he can lie, right? Because that's the Western culture, right? That's what you, as a real estate agent, as a politician, pretend so-called leader, just paid oligarch puppets. That's all they have. As an economist, right? Capitalism is the best system ever. All you do is lie. It's all you have. All you all day is lie, for your own personal benefit to maintain a planetary hegemony. But so the Western culture, the Western mind is like made up of like each of these little lies, each of them individually. If you look at it too long, it's nonsense. Like, what are you talking about? The light is wrong, right? What are you talking about? You can't, the brush is the wrong thickness. I mean, if you're a real expert painters can paint, with the back of their head, just looking into a mirror, like rubbing, their own, hair follicles, or, their own mohawks against the side of a canvas. People, an actual great artist can paint with their finger if they have to, right? But under scrutiny, all Western lies fall apart. Under serious, like if you have actual scholars, that's why they worried about when they actually have to go to court, like to a serious court, like an international court that's not run by the West and easily purchasable. They're worried about the going into actual international criminal courts, right? That's why they're sweating bullets. But it's like under scrutiny, any of these lies, I can't do this, or we conquered you all anyway. Like, if you look at it too closely, if you have all the receipts, if you look at the history, right? If you break it down, it all falls apart, right? Because everything is lies. So like, each one of the stacks of the Franken lies, going all the way back to the greatest people ever were the Greeks that created democracy and freed us from the evil Easterners, right? Xerxes, just like the U.S. and the Prosperity Guardian the U.S. and the West are freeing us from the evil Hamas now. They were freeing us from the evil Arab now, right? And you look at it closely, it's like, well, you kind of, they weren't that free, actually. They were slave owning, they were slave owning, misogynists that abused all of their women and people of color that they used to do all of their labor. And yeah, they had votes, but it was like, this is like a board of directors of a mega corporation like Walmart or Raytheon. They have votes too, but that's the kind of voting that the West does. It's a handful of, it's an oligarchy. It's the richest, most powerful dudes under an imperial, capitalist, colonialist, white supremacist system, Western supremacist system, and a handful of them sit down in a boardroom and vote. That was the Greek democracy, right? That's all it's ever been, right? That's the Greek democracy. That's the Roman imperial court. That's the feudal court. I was just watching Bridgerton. I mean, it's just, it's like, it's a fun show, but I mean, the European court is just the Versailles 76 layer cakes and the beautiful floral gowns is really great. They had really fun art. It's nice that you can watch that now on Bridgerton with black and brown and Asian people. And there's a lot less of the violence and all the, it's kind of like a sanitized 1800s, alternate 1800s. But like what the European court was just the Greek democracy, which was never real democracy, right? But they talk about it as though it has been, right? Which is the richest, most powerful handful of people in a room sitting around deciding whether they will execute millions of Africans in this country or that country this week. Shall we squeeze the serfs and the peasants and the slaves and all the masses, and shall we kill 1 million buffalo this week, or should we kill like 1 million natives this week? What do we do, right? They're all gonna do imperialism. They're all gonna do massive planetary evil, right? Should we just should we do billions of dollars of horrible, destructive, big ag farming here? Should we steal native land and put pineapples like Dole pineapple after we steal an entire country out and do genocide and erase history in Hawaii? Should we do that first, or should we do should we go to Chiquita banana? Should we go with Chiquita and mass slaughter the native people in Central America, right? Which one are we doing this week? It's not really a question of should we mass murder, mass enslave, mass kill, cause environmental damage, oppress our own working classes, wreck everything, and then make up BS about it, right? It's not a question of whether we'll do that or not in the democracy, right? In the feudal democracy of the British Windsor court or the Versailles court, the Greek democracy of the oligarch toga party, the Roman democracy of their oligarchy, the American democracy of a bunch of CEOs sitting around, a boardroom table on a glass skyscraper. It's like a glass Roman Colosseum or a glass Roman, they even have the Greco-Roman fluted pillars everywhere, right? It's never a real democracy. It's just a handful of the most powerful, richest, mostly cis white straight guys and some tokens deciding what to do. Just deciding which horrible, non-democratic, non-human rights, not unjust, planetary evil, thing to do. Not whether they'll do it, right? And then how they'll make up lies. Marketing, which is just a long-form way of saying marketing is just like a targeted modern form of Western culture, which is mass lying, right? It's like smoking is good for you. It's just like, well, we had, it's like women are genetically predisposed and just as an organism predisposed to be the slave foot massager and child future Guatemalan executor soldier manufacturing, right? Women are just for popping out future murderers, right? And future voters for a racist Western society, right? And then they also are, for cooking and cleaning, and that's it, right? And so this has always been the Western. That's why I argue, like in Neofeud and Neofeud 2, this is nothing has ever changed. Nothing has ever changed. The propaganda, the kind of lies, have changed from time to time, right? And even like the trajectory of change is a myth, right? I would argue that from Greece to Rome to feudal era all the way to the British and French empires to the American era, nothing has changed at all where it really counts. It's just a handful of the richest, most powerful dudes sitting around in a small group deciding which evil thing to do today, sometimes fighting each other over who gets more of the share of it. Even during their colonial wars, it's still the same ruling class families of Europe, basically throwing their peasants, getting their peasants mass killed, playing human chess with each other, right? And it's just like, the ruling class, as they were as Protestants kill Catholic kill Protestant, as the feudal elites sent people to make trebuchets, the ISRAELAS, they're using trebuchets, the French trebuchets, because it's going back to European culture, right? They're making artisanal trebuchets to throw fireballs at Lebanon now. It's laughable, right? It's like they're making propaganda, right? But it's really, right, when you look at isn't real, right? They're making this propaganda again. Like, look, our soldiers, our IDF soldiers are doing STEM. They're doing STEM and history. They're making trebuchets. And they built this wall. They have this Cannes presentation where there's like a 1600s French trebuchet with like a made of wood, and it's got like a it's got that it's got that sling at the back with a, and it has a flaming stone or got a flaming rock, or it's got something, a big fireball on the end, and they release it, and it's like it throws this fireball over this wall they've constructed, and I'm like, it couldn't go more than 500 feet. I don't know how far, not very far, right? And it's like we're gonna use our great European medieval because it was part of it's like Hamas, the Palestinian resistance is so good at guerrilla tactics and all these other asymmetrical warfare tactics. Like we're getting good at asymmetrical tactics too, and we're going back to our European origins, right? And it's like what is that gonna do? That's all it is good for is propaganda, so that people maybe we'll send them more money, or believe that they're some kind of. I mean, it's like it's kind of ridiculous. I don't know what the point of that was, but anyway, you're only gonna lose because they militarily are, they're cowards, and they're there for supremacy and domination, and they're not military. They have more money and technology and in total number of weapons, but they're not capable of actually fighting and winning any war there. The West is in Palestine. I'm trying not to say that because I want people to find this video, and the West hides. The West has no freedom of speech. Another lie, right? That they have any. They don't. They just hide all the stuff that black and brown and the global majority and global South say, and Native American, Native people and Native indigenous people around the world, including in the U.S. and Hawaii, say. So that's another lie, right? And if you poke that a little bit, we have freedom of speech. But if you poke that a little bit, it's like, wait, no, there is none. Now it's obvious, right? So even if you're a cis, white, straight, Republican, military analyst, worked in the with the Bush administration, even that Scott Ritter, a decorated intelligence U.S. Weapons inspector and Marine, you still don't have. He's not even saying anti-American stuff. He's saying like pro-American stuff. They won't even let him talk. He's just like this the lies, the rotting multi-thousand-year pile of the global world's evil, like the rotting stench, of like it's like that line from Thriller, the funk of 40,000 years, not that long, because Western history doesn't go back that far. It's a young people, but it's like maybe a little over 2,000 years, if anything. But this is 2,000 years of planetary, the greatest evil and wrong in the world is coming to the forefront and stinking, right, so badly right now, and to the point that they even have to, like, they will always suppress black and brown and especially in women's speech if they talk too loud and they say patriarchy is a problem, and they say, well, you gotta shut up, which is complicit with the hierarchical system that runs the West. But now it's like they have to even silence those people because it is falling apart. As it falls apart, as the tide recedes, you're going to see more and more of all the dead bodies and all the massive planetary malice that has been waged and that has been in existence for certainly the last 500 years at a huge scale for the colonial era, where the mass death and destruction of so many people, animals and environments, the plants, the ecosystems that are gone, what's sometimes called the Anthropocene. It should be called the Westocene. It's definitely the Capitalocene. I would argue the capitalist system is an economic extension of Western culture, because they literally did also bring it to the forefront. That's one difference between the Greeks 2,000 years ago, the Greeks and those east of them, right? If you look at that, the space in the Mediterranean between Greece and what they called sometimes called Babylon, where Xerxes came from, they actually forgave. They had a mandatory forgiveness of all loans, debts, right? Every 50 years through Jubilee. And the Greeks, one thing that separated the West from the East was they didn't, right? They allowed the accumulation of capital, and accumulation of debt, and a construction of oligarchies. And the oligarchies in the West. So the Greeks would make large quantities of money, obviously using Afro-Asiatic labor, right, slave labor, and also women's labor, and so a handful of wealthy Greek men, Hellenic men. It was not they didn't have the concept necessarily of whiteness in the 1800s colonial sense, but they had that sense of we were the Hellenic people were real men. And they were the pinnacle of the species. They were the greatest. They were supreme, above women and above people, non-Hellenic men. They were savage. They were barbaric. They were low, and they deserved for all these. They had all these lists of reasons why they deserved to live that life. And the oligarchies of Greece paid people, right? And they were able to maintain that power in part by having people construct these lies. Pay people like Aristotle, or they would willingly go along with this, but they had to construct the lies that enabled the extraction of the labor of the enslaved peoples, right, who also had debts to the creditors, which were who, right, the same people. And so like they deeply hated, had they hated the societies that forgave the debts and rooted out and got made to they they were never perfect, but they had ways of of removing and restoring an unjust government, right? So that's part of what the Jubilee was, because they understood that if people were to accrue such great debts to moneyed oligarchies, the handful of wealthy elites could entrap and enslave those people based upon those debts. And this caused great instability in the society. It caused violence in the society. It caused people to not be doing their best work, because there would be a class of people that would be, food insecure, and they'd be living miserable lives, and their work would be of lower quality, and it would cause instability in the society, right? The West, one characteristic of the West is a deeply unstable society, constantly having explosive empires in an international scale, internally, constantly having uprisings, just upset people, disgruntled people, even when they're wealthy, right? Even now, the average Western person is very upset at their boss, at their government, at their society generally. They're not happy with their life, right? They feel, and they are being shortchanged out of their work, right? They're not being paid fairly for their work. I mean, even if you are a cis white guy, in a lot of cases, if you are the pinnacle of man, right, under the Western white supremacist misogynistic system, even still, you could still be exploited. You must be, because that's the system, right, that the Greeks pioneered, right? And so then to maintain the unstable system for the last 2,000 years, they have to constantly spin these lies, right? You will make it someday. All you have to do is stick to it, prosperity doctrine, rags to riches, or well, if you're black or white, you deserve that, because that's your place in the world. You are fit to be our cattle. As a black or brown person, you are fit to be our you are our slave. It's not the same as you are a beast of burden, and that's your place in the world. And I have this massive book, to explain why, right? Which Way Western Man. I was just looking at that because I was looking when I was thinking about this. It was a book authored by a Western man about, even there they go, capitalism is a problem, but the problem is really women, and it's the Jewish question and the people of color, and it's this, and this is why they never address the capitalism problem of their own exploitation without seriously taking and incorporating into their analysis the lies about and the oppression of non-white people, non-Western, what consider Western people, and women, right? And so that's always going to fall short. I mean, because there's times when they will begin to question one of these things, but there's no systemic analysis. Like they might go, oh, we should not harm the environment, so let's use less fossil fuels, and that's a good thing, right? Or we should, we should not harm animals. Let's not use this product because it's harming some animals, and that's a good thing, and it's a good thing. Okay, but also, that system that's harming the environment and these animals is linked up to a multi-thousand year and certainly multi-century system of colonialism, capitalism, white supremacy. That's about mass huge factory farming. That's about massive just plundering all of the resources, ripping things out of the ground in the most destructive way possible to maximize profit, exploiting so much labor. The vast majority of all the labor in the world is done by non-Western people, the hardest and essential labor to make all that profit. And if you want to stop the destruction of the environment, if you want to stop the harm of animals, you have all of these white supremacist capitalist corporations and the empires and the militaries that back them all up, that are run by a handful of white guys. And we have to have a full spectrum, total systemic analysis and a total systemic fight and struggle against all of that. And then it's like, well, I don't really care about that. Can I just get some vegan cheese, even though the vegan Whole Foods and then non-vegan Whole Foods cheese is all made by slaves in a 25 cents an hour for-profit prison, by mostly black and brown kids who are arrested for standing in front of the 7-Eleven while like 3 shades darker than, oatmeal. And, and it's like, well, I don't really care that much. I just want to feel less guilty about being a beneficiary of thousands of years of planetary malice and evil. And so that's why there's a whole industry that caters to like white veganism and, imperialist, environmentalism, green capitalism, right? Green capitalism, which is to say green colonialism as well. And it's about building one token solar farm in one token solar, like 10,000 watt facility in Africa, and then taking all the money and giving it to fossil fuel corporations. I mean, it's literally nothing is changing. They're like, even I'll eat like, I'll eat like, or I'll just say I'm eating the X, but I'm actually eating tons of beef. Is like the white world is like, oh yeah, I really care about the animals, and that's why I'm gonna tell everyone else. I'm just gonna use that as an excuse to beat down on black and brown indigenous people, even though black and brown indigenous people represent more of the vegans and actual vegetarians in the world. They just don't go around, propagating and proselytizing like a fundamentalist Western Christian. But that's because that's Western culture, is to also go around and browbeat other people with half truths and lies, right? And so that's just the continuation in the agricultural ethics sector to make yourself seem like a good person as a white Canadian dude, and not address the systemic problems in the same way that the anti-capitalist Germans in the 1940s didn't address the systemic problems. At the root, they took at a very shallow, self-serving level, and that's that's one reason why. That's something that also has to be gotten past in the collapse of Western domination, because the luxury of being able to continue the process of lying in the big post World War II lie that we have reconciled, we have righted the wrongs. I mean, the collective West, right? United States, etc., Canada, Europe, the white world plus Japan and whoever their vassals. But especially the U.S., the Britain, and the G7, we have righted our wrongs because we defeated the Nazis. That's number one lie. You didn't. You funded and made tons of money from them, and you still have them. You put them in charge. 70% of there's more German Nazis and Nazi officers in charge of Europe and of Germany after World War II than before, and they just did it. They weren't capable of getting away with all of their crimes at the scales that they were during World War II because the Russians and the communists defeated them, not you. You parachuted a bunch of literal boots on the ground into Omaha Beach to pretend like you won World War II. Yeah, there were people who were anti-Nazi, so for certain, in the West. They didn't run the West. They never have. And that's why Victoria Nuland went and backed the Ukraine coup under the U.S. and Western actual policy, which is to install fascism everywhere, which is what they've done in Argentina. It's what they've done in Bolivia in 2019 for Elon's lithium. Oh, I'm sorry, he doesn't have it anymore because Bolivia kicked Elon Musk and the United States and the collective West ass there with general strikes and actual indigenous environmental socialism with the MAS party. So there is a deep lie that we are better now. We're the good people now. And so after World War II, right? So the 1950s and the 20th century, right? We're the good people. We are the human rights and the freedom and the democracy. And yeah, we might have some racism, but we solved that in civil rights. You didn't solve that. Nothing got solved. You killed Malcolm X and you killed Martin Luther King. And you put moderate white liberals, which is, again, the people that are the best at perpetuating the latest in a 2,000-year series of Western lies, which is that moderate, liberal, rules-based capitalism is the best system ever. And right, and that's been the lie. That's been the central lie, which is that, we have some conservatives over there, but the conservatives started going a little bit by the wayside for a while because in the face of a world where there were large communist and which is to say non-Western, non-capitalistic, large communist and socialist entities in the world, and large rising global South, which had military power that was in excess of the U.S. and Europe. Right? They defeated the West. Britain and France, these are failures. Today, the U.S. and Britain and France are talking about fighting Russia. They can't fight anything. The U.S. can't fight again. U.S. can't fight Yemen. They sure as hell can't fight Russia. They lost to goat herders in Afghanistan. They lost to poor farmers in Vietnam. The United States hasn't won a single war it's ever been in. It's good at starting wars and instigating and agitating and provoking. It's not good at winning anything. The U.S. and NATO, that's a big lie, right? That's why every time you see these RIMPAC exercises that they're having in Hawaii soon, right? Every time you see these photos of the U.S. military with all these ships and all these helicopters flying around, right? All of that is the Aristotle of today. We are the best. We are awesome because look at all of our battleships. What good is your battleships today? They're just getting sunk. Most of your battleships don't work. The crew on your battleships have had COVID like 25 times. Having the U.S. military, the Pentagon was caught this week. A report exposed the fact that they had been propagating anti-vax. The United States military had been propagating anti-vaccination propaganda throughout the Philippines, Southeast Asia, and actually all over the world, especially the global South, right? In order to stop the Filipinos and Southeast Asians and billions of people from getting the evil Chinese vaccine. There was a terrible Chinese vaccine. So there's already been anti-vax propaganda inside of the West and the U.S. But some of what was happening in the U.S., right, was the propaganda that the United States and its Department of Defense, which is the United States basically, because all it is a military-industrial complex. It's like a giant broken aircraft carrier manufacturer, right, wearing a stupid star-spangled hat. That's the United States, right? And so the United States Pentagon propagated all of this nonsense, of this anti-vax nonsense across the world in order to stop, Asians, Pacific Islanders, and Africans and Latin Americans from getting needed vital vaccines. Because remember, the United States and the West, what did they do when the vaccine happened? They had vaccine apartheid, right? Rather than get the global majority, the most vulnerable peoples, access to these vaccines. Remember when it was first in the 2021, 2022, they were hoarding all of these, the first, the mRNA vaccine, the Pfizer's, they had the Moderna, and all these huge capitalists. It's just, again, Western, modern Greek oligarchy in healthcare characteristics. The Pfizer's and the Moderna, the huge corporations, with their 8 guys sitting around having democracy in their boardrooms. They voted, right? And they said, hey guys, smoking their cigars, going, hey guys, what would be really good for us modern Greco-Roman, British, French, now American democracy in our boardrooms is if 7 billion people didn't get any vaccines, that we could make tons of money selling it to the richest people, to overselling it overpriced to the people who should have had publicly funded vaccination research, right? I mean, vaccines work, but they don't need to make billions of dollars for a handful of billionaires that run pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer. And they said, what we should do is we should not let anyone else get vaccines, right? Because maybe we might sell them to them one day, but we just don't want. And also my buddies in the Pentagon, well, they're the same people, by the way. They also don't want China to, get any, they don't want. We don't want China to maybe make friends around the world with the vaccine diplomacy. We don't want them to help anyone. Where we could make money starving everyone of much needed, antibody and much needed, COVID-19 protection, right? So let's propagate anti-vax propaganda across the entire planet. And then what happened was that boomerang back into the United States. That's part of what happened. And it's not just boomerang. There's the right already had a plan to run anti-vax propaganda. Then they pivoted to that quickly. Because they don't tend to control the Democrats, the liberals tend to more. The conservatives don't. The liberals control more of the big health entities, and so that's basically the only split. It's which of the two 8 billionaire boardroom dude democracies are you in? Are you in the conservative or the liberal one? And there's a lot of overlap, right? But sometimes If you're in big oil, if you're in big cattle, and if you're in big, fossil fuel and big church, that tends to be the conservative one. And if you're in, the big health, and you're in big university, and you're in big, which is to say, GENOCIDE facility. That's what university is, right? As we see with the millions of people out there to stop divest their universities from from the world's biggest war crimes. And you have big education, you have big healthcare, and you have big like science and Silicon Valley. It tends to be the Democrats, like Nancy Pelosi. But there's this overlap, and crossover, obviously. And they're all the same party. They're all pro-empire. They're all pro-capitalist. They're all pro, Western domination, obviously. And so, and so that's one example where you have that was another lie where they propagated this nonsense that vaccines don't work to the entire world. And one of the article was about the Philippines, but it wasn't just the Philippines; it was everywhere, and that resulted in millions of people's unnecessary deaths. Right. Also, the fact that they withheld the vaccines from Africa, Asia, and Latin America, right, was racist, and it was also for-profit, horrible policy as well, right? In fact, maybe a lot of variants could have been prevented if people got those vaccines a little bit earlier. Many deaths would have definitely have been prevented, right? And if they hadn't propagated this lie to themselves ultimately, but also to the world, the anti-vax narratives, right? The military is involved in that. The military is involved in propagating the anti-vax narrative. So this is the other thing, right? This is the Western hodgepodge Frankenmind. It's just like patching all different nonsense together, right? The West propagates anti-vax narratives while talking about we need to get everybody vaccinated, right? You just don't make any sense, right? It's because there is no sense. It's just a handful of the richest, most powerful gangsters saying whatever they feel like at the moment that will make them the most money. So if you're more invested in Pfizer, you'll promote some pro-vax stuff, right? Where you want to make the money. Now, if you invested more in Lockheed Martin, right, and you want to sell weapons around the world, and you're going with the DoD, then you're let's do some anti-vax around the world, and then your Pfizer like, well, maybe the anti-vax will help me because I don't want vaccines being sold in the global South. I want to make tons of money selling them here, and I want them to not have any. So let's make sure we sell them all in the global North as much as possible, and stop it being sold for cheaper in the global South. And China's like, we'll give super cheap free vaccine to the global South, and to Africa, Asia, Latin America, and they're like, well, we can't. So and all the boardroom dudes, right? All the Aristotle's descendants all were like, well, we can't let them do that because they're evil CCP communists. The thing is, they're not necessarily the evil CCP communists, but they do have a communist party, and they are advancing upon a non-Western path, which is to say a communist a communist is the final point, but they're on a socialist, anti-colonial, anti-capitalist in the long run, and anti-imperial and anti-white supremacist path on a multipolar in a bridge through a multipolar world, building the new Silk Roads, which were again the Silk Road, the ancient Silk Road, right? Which is the huge it was the multipolar world for thousands of years before the colonial era, right? It was a non-domination based, a non-hegemonic based, a non-mass lie based, right, system of trade and cooperation, cultural exchange, economic cooperation, economic trade with win-win characteristics that went from across the Eurasian supercontinent, from China all the way through Central Asia, through Afghanistan, all the way to Syria, down to Africa, through big sections of Africa, through Djibouti, all across through the Indian Ocean. Yemen was actually a place that was right across from the Djibouti, which is that the eastern tip of eastern end of Africa, and Yemen near the Red Sea was actually it was on that route that went down around India, and there was a maritime Silk Road which we Native Pacific Islanders were part of, and this existed outside of the West. outside of there was a period, in fact, where the Greeks and the Romans did access some of this. There were Greek Buddhist sculptures and Buddhist art at one point, so they had some understanding that this was something there, but they never got to the point of fully incorporating it. They took some of the understanding. They took some knowledge from exchanges there, right? But a lot of that got lost, and certainly by the time you got to the 1000 and then certainly 2000 AD, like the connections have been systematically, right? Whatever connections there were have been systematically cut off and erased as much as possible, in order to construct, right, the separation between West and East. And like, you don't even learn, right, in the West. And I went to a GENOCIDE school, a de-Hawaiianization and ethnic cleansing school. It's called U.S. colony schools in Hawaii. They don't teach anything about actual Hawaiian history. They only teach American and Western history, right? And when I went to this school, they start at Greece. They start in Rome. They go through some of the Renaissance. They skip over a whole lot of all of the worst parts of the history of the West. They jump through, there's like an Enlightenment. They breeze past all of the greatest evils through colonialism. Hey, we got enlightened, and then there was democracy, and there's Thomas Jefferson. We declared independence, and we invented this great American, freedom and the Bill of Rights, and they didn't invent anything. They stole that from the separation of powers was stolen from the Chinese. Their constitution was stolen from Native Americans and the Iroquois Federation. So, and they badly stole it. They didn't even implement any of this, because you had stolen land and ongoing mass ethnic cleansings of the Native Americans, and then you had slaves, and you had the same Greek system, right? And they just called it democracy and human rights and constitutions, right? But again, this was the United States is just the Europeans wanting to reconstruct new democracies, which is to say, the groups of a handful of super rich white straight guys, landed white man aristocrats like Thomas Jefferson, doing the same thing that they've always been doing, which is coming in a room. They weren't smoking cigars or having togas. They're getting together in a room, deciding which evil to do today, not whether or not to do it. Which Native American should we wipe out today and scalp? And how much should we charge for the skin of their children, women, and male heads? Those are the decisions that they would make. Not like whether they should do that or not. And like, what flavors of Western illusory Christian nonsense should we allow? Should we allow all of it, or should we allow? Because they didn't allow a lot of Muslims, and they didn't allow Native American religious practice. So freedom of religion, if you choose from one of these completely nonsensical, horrible, evil, mass lie based retellings of a brown Palestinians resistance story called Jesus, right? So the U.S. and the West, the U.S. has never had freedom of religion. It's never had freedom of anything. It's never had democracy. It's never had equality of any kind. It's never had justice. But all it does is keep retelling the same lies to try to maintain domination, obviously of Native Americans, obviously of black people in the United States, obviously of women. Starting to fail at that. It's failing at all of those, actually. Well, especially to contain Africa, Africa is kicking out. The United States is leaving Niger right now as we speak. The United States military is packing up and getting on large U.S. Military aircraft and shipping them out right now, because the Africa is in economic and military and many other ways defeating and removing colonizers with the assistance of Russia, by the way, and China as well, and other the rest of the global majority. Niger, Burkina Faso, New Caledonia. The French are trying to massacre native Pacific Islanders right now. In this, our Hawaiian relatives south of us, near Australia, in Kanaki, what's called New Caledonia. It's a French colony, and they're resisting. Macron has now withdrawn Macron, which is the fraudulent, non-democratic leader of the so-called Western democracy of France. Never was any democracy in France. It's only been murderous perfume salesmen and 76-layer cake makers sitting on a bunch of oppressed workers and even more oppressed Algerians and Africans and people around the world and Vietnamese, right? There's never been any democracy anywhere in Europe. There definitely isn't any now. It's laughable. It's a joke. It's a joke. It's a handful of people it's a handful of people who will sell their own families for money, right? They're also called European politicians and media people, right? They're professional liars, right? That's who runs Europe, and all they want is some money from an American, American, imperialist or neocon, right? That's all. Europe is a bunch of people begging for money from them, and then they have these fraudulent nonsense coloring book games called elections, where they vote for the imperialist with more right-wing characteristics, Le Pen, or the imperialist with more snobbish liberal characteristics like Macron. This is laughable. Nothing about Europe is changing. They're all going down the tubes. The West is going down the tubes, and it's sad. They have nothing that seems like they're going. They're all gonna probably. They're all good. Yeah, because it seems like they're all going to go down the tubes trying to fight Russia. Apparently, not because a lot of Europeans don't want to, but they're also incapable apparently of taking their countries back. The thing is, the West has never had a real democracy. They've never had anybody on any kind of scale with real courage. You have a handful of people that will speak out, but they're in the minority. Right? Like you'll have a Scott Ritter come out and be like, "Hey, this is the truth and this is wrong," and then like 99% of Americans, especially ones that declare them, the ones who call themselves Americans, like proudly. There's a decreasing number of those in the United States that are like, "I am proudly an American." They'll be like, "I don't like the United States. I was born here, but I don't enjoy it." But those who call themselves American, there's very few of them. Right, a lot of them have a lot of power. Right, there's one Scott Ritter, and then there's like 25. There's one Daniel Hale, there's one Aaron Bushnell that would be like, "We need to stop killing all these innocent people," and then set himself on fire. Right, and actually do the right thing and speak the truth. And then for every Aaron Bushnell, there's literally 500,000 coward lying. Mostly white dude cowards. Because one of him, and then what he said, Aaron Bushnell did the morally correct thing. Where's the other 500,000? How many U.S. military personnel are there? Hundreds of thousands. Hundreds of thousands. This is one Aaron Bushnell. Right? Because the West has never had any kind of skill, moral backbone, courage, systemic analysis, even access to the truth. But when they get it, they reject it because the Western mind is trained to, again, go back, reach for a lie, double down, punch down, just go, "Oh, you're just a backward savage," when you get criticized legitimately. "Oh, well, we didn't do that. We just slipped and accidentally committed mass murder in Vietnam, and when we shot, fully automatics into the rice paddies and dropped Agent Orange and killed millions with chemical damage, starvation, and mass birth defects. We just accidentally did that. Right? This is why every Western military veteran that doesn't talk about his experiences is a coward. Right? They take it to their grave. They usually will. 5 times you're more likely to end your life. But what would be more courageous is if you like there's a Mike Preisner, who works for Empire Files to try to bring the truth about what the U.S. and the Empire and the collective West is doing militarily. Right? There's one Mike Preisner, and there's some that go with him. Right? To do these marches. There's a Jesse Ventura, and then there's for every Jesse Ventura, every Mike Preisner, every Scott Ritter, every Aaron Bushnell, there's at least 100 silent dudes, right, going to a golf game, collecting money, feeling a little sad about killing all these innocent people, right, doing nothing, not doing democracy. Right? Not. I thought you were all Paul Revere. I thought you were all like the great freedom. No, because the West is full of cowards. They're not even good at fighting wars. The thing is, they all lost in all their wars. They're like the Israelis. The U.S. and Western military are a bunch of cowards. They're only good at shooting women and children from their helicopter. When they have to get in the field, and they all run away screaming, and lose. If the U.S. and the British and the French and all these other militaries were so hot, they really were so tough with 100 or 1,000 times more money, weapons, aircraft, and power. You should have been able to defeat all these other way disempowered militaries, but they're not. Why? Because they're westernized, which is, again, pushed into being a coward, selfish, individualistic, fearing for yourself, not thinking about the collective, not even of your own people, thinking of yourself. You're a spoiled infantile brat. You have too much resources, and you're filled with lies, and you're encouraged to lie and punch down, which is a cowardly thing to do. A brave thing would be to punch up, but you don't do that. Right? How would the Greeks, Romans, British, French, Spanish, and Americans have sustained oligarchy if their masses were taught to punch up? They're not. They're trained to be spoiled fascist babies, which is what the white man is. And it's also why it's a good thing that's going away. Because we don't, it's like, and ideally what would happen is that there would be a lot more, Aaron Bushnells and a lot more truth tellers that would join the ones that have come out, right? Ideally. I mean, now going forward, that's what has happened, right? What I just said. What happens going forward, right? As the West collapses, right? As the BRICS just came out. The BRICS, if you don't know what this is, Brazil, Russia, India, China, Iran, and 59 other countries want to join that. It's the largest economic powerhouse. Is the global majority. It's the non-Western, non-white world. It's Africa, Asia, Latin America rising. It's the non-Western world that has been oppressed for a long period of time, that has been left out, and has been run by these Western clowns and horrible people. And the BRICS is now saying, right? The latest one is they're now saying that the United Nations, the WHO, altogether, the IMF, the World Bank, the financial, the World Health Organization has just proven that it's useless in the sense that it has been lying for 4 years about the aerosolized nature of COVID-19. It's new in the whole time. So, but it's under the UN, right? So the UN itself, all its associated agencies, its so-called aid programs, how successful has it been at getting that aid in, right? The international criminal courts, right? How successful have they been at dispensing justice over the last 7 years, right? The UN, the IMF, the financial institutions, right? How much economic justice has been brought through the IMF and the World Bank, right? And so now the rest of the world that is now more economically, militarily more powerful, technologically more advanced. China has 6G, 5G. China is blowing away. It's like every day there's a new mind-blowing statistic coming out. They have cured diabetes, asthma, and multiple cancers in the last week. Okay? They only have 30%. They have 30% approximately of where they want their masses to be at in terms of like common moderate prosperity. So they are only getting started, and they are blowing away all renewable energy. It just came out that China peaked in renewable energy last year, right? BYD projected in 3 months they would have car sales, they would have more EV sales than gas powered sales. Speaking on climate change, they broke through that in 3 weeks. It was projected that China might reach their goal was carbon neutrality by 2030, right? And some suggested it could happen even earlier, right? Last year, China already hit peak carbon emissions. They just realized it this week, right? So they are blowing away in environmental protections, in economics, in developing people, developing in a sustainable way, and also empowering all the people in their country and around the world, in offering billions of people in Asia, Africa, Latin America alternate non-colonial pathways to development, which is the Silk Road's path to development, right? It's really just the old path to development. It's new, it's been updated, but it's the win-win cooperative pathway that was established before the colonial era, 500 years ago, when the West expanded from beyond Europe, And so, in a certain sense, it's a new thing. It is a new thing. We're in a new world. There was no artificial suns, right? The Chinese are also winning in fusion, quantum computing, every day. I can't even keep track of how many breakthroughs are happening and how much losses and collapse and how many failures the United States, the Britain, France, Canada, Australia and the West are going through. Saudi, another huge one. Saudi Arabia, the basis, the fulcrum, the central Greco-Roman pillar, the central pillar upon which the United States' hegemony, right, the American primacy rested upon, was the Saudi deal, the petrodollar, where the energy of the world's largest fossil fuel producer, which was running the world's economies, which ran mostly on oil. Another reason why they want to stick to oil, so that because if people get on renewable energy, how are you supposed to control entire countries and entire world affairs and world economics and sanction people into oblivion, right? So Saudi has just that petrodollar was the central if not the central pillar to maintaining the United States global supremacy and domination, which is to say Western domination. And Saudi Arabia just said the deal's done. They just threw it out just like that. I mean, they're already, they were like not doing what America wanted, but they still had that deal in place. And just this a day or two ago, they said that deal's over. Because they know, I mean, obviously Saudi Arabia they have many internal problems, especially their leadership, many Arab countries. But the Arab Street is another thing. And the Arab world, which has gone through a lot of colonial, horrible Western domination for the last multiple centuries, but now we're seeing that. Obviously, Iraq, Afghanistan alone, there's multi-millions of people killed, murdered, 60 million Arabs displaced in the last less than a century, with the U.S. and NATO and West foreign wars there, of aggression for resources, and causing massive humanitarian destruction, environmental destruction, and loss of life, bombing Libya into slave markets, right? That Arab world is going, the West, this is done. We never liked the West. We never liked Europe. It is an elite exclusive club of snobs, right, that don't take a bath. They're elite white snobs. They don't take a bath. Everything they spew is lies. All they give us is, all they've ever done is lecture us while doing the things that they tell us to do. Like, you should be more just to your population. You should stop committing human rights violations, while they go around and blow up all the children, right? Imagine being an Arab and being told, maybe we'll give you a loan, which is really just not to develop your schools, hospitals, infrastructure. It's really just to steal your resources through the back end and give all of your control of all your natural resources to our Western corporations. And you're getting a lecture from some European or American politician going like, you should really stop violating human rights and you should really do economic justice. That's why we got to come in and do economic injustice and violate all your human rights and kill all your children. Right? Imagine enduring that as an Arab for like centuries. At least a century. Imagine being an African in South Africa or in Niger and having a German or a French or Brussels diplomat come in, some European come in and go, you should really stop committing human rights violations, while they come in and, cut off some more of your children's hands, install slave markets like in Libya by bombing your country to the Stone Age, overthrowing your democracy, meddling everywhere, installing private, again, 8 white guys sitting around in togas, right? Sipping pea soup or French wine or eating American burgers, smoking their cigar, going, I wonder what we should do with all of your uranium or all of your nickel in New Caledonia. Imagine just being lectured for centuries by those people, right? While they're stealing all your stuff, killing all your people, acting like they're better than you, just like genetically better than you, culturally superior to you, when you taught them a lot of the stuff that they thought that they created themselves, because they lie to themselves all day long. And now you have the opportunity to be like, well, actually, BRICS and China and Russia and the rest of the world, we have a better deal over there, right? Like, why should we? The only thing that will stop you is you fear, right? You fear military or maybe economic retaliation, right? Sanctions and bombs. That's all the West has. That's why they needed the petrodollar, right? The Europeans needed America to get the petrodollar so that their elites could keep being feudal, colonial, capitalist, Greco-Roman assholes. Right? They need in one sense, the Europeans, they're elites that have always ruled Europe, as the Greek and Roman elites have always ruled Greece and Rome. They all just basically said, well, we're going to move to America since we got destroyed, blowing ourselves up like a bunch of losers in World War II, right? By supporting fascism, by lying to our own populations and sending them off to defend capitalism with the fist of fascism as capitalism was decaying. And we got all ourselves killed trying to fight Russia and the communists. And now we're in shambles and we're on fire. And then and Hitler turned on us, and so we had to and we lost that because we're a bunch of idiots. And now we're going to go to America, and America will keep doing what we have done for us, right? All the Europeans, the European elites. I'm talking about the lords, the kings and queens, and they're all the billionaire class people, by the way. The lords and the ladies and their banking class and their colonizers. They're rich. They're CEOs of their major, Volvo. They're heads of the big, the big financial institutions in Britain, in London and Paris. Right, and they all said, "Well, we're going to go to America. America, you're not blown up at the end of World War II. Keep doing global evil for us, right?" And so then in Europe, and so anyways, that's why. So in one sense, people, it's like, who is wagging who? Is Europe wagging America? America wagging Europe? They're all basically the same people, right? Which is They're non-democracies with brainwashed people, internally racist. 65% of Europe hates Russians. So this is one problem. It's not just the elites. It's not, you have the people there. They have a majority. It's the same thing as Israel. 90+% are pro, they're pro genocide. They think that Palestinians are subhuman, right? Europeans think is a huge percentage, possibly a majority. They think Africans and Asians Muslims definitely are subhuman. Not just the open air conservatives, right? And the 65%, they don't like, or they hate, or they despise the Russian people, and they're like some of them are willing to go die for it. Now, some of them are scared to fight them, but it's really sad that it's like a lot of them are like, well, we should. The elites. Now it's like, okay, well, whose fault is this? Is it because the Greek oligarchs brainwashed all of their common people into believing in the supremacy, in the domination, right? Into the oligarchic, supremacist, misogynistic, capitalism? Is it the Europeans that brainwash everybody to believe, we all have to fight Russia and communism and African and Muslims and Asians are less than us? Is it the elites' fault? Is it the people's fault? It doesn't really matter, right? But in one sense, the masses, reinforce their elites with the as a system of cowardice, as a system of self deception, external deception by your ruling class, and then self deception, right? The people are represented by their government in one sense. Now, the people's ultimate long-term interest is not to go along with this, right? Because Europe is hurting itself by cutting off trade with Russia, by cutting off trade with China. Economically, they're falling apart. This is a terrible decision, right? But like, in the sense that the people don't, the people have internalized and are not questioning. It seems like they're not questioning, not on any scale. Like Americans are not questioning their military. The Europeans are not questioning their racist, colonialist, wrong-headed policies, right? And then also the fact that Europeans think they have democracies, or Americans think they have a democracy, right? And they don't want to question it, because this is one of the big problems, is that if you really want to make a change, it's not going to come from an election in the West, right? Elections were created by the undemocratic, tyrannical plutocracies, the oligarchies established by the Greeks, right? They created the so-called elections because they knew they wouldn't change anything in any significant way, because they were very good at making up lies and making everybody believe that, yes, we're going to have different policies now. There'd never be, not when it matters. It's the same 8 guys going to sit down, right? Just like now. You can have all the Republican, Democrat elections. You can have all the European parties can come and go. Macron could be replaced by Le Pen. Is that going to change their policy to vis-a-vis the proxy wars, colonialism in Africa? No, it's not going to change anything whatsoever. It's going to take, and this is, then it's like the West is like, well, what do we do? Well, it's going to take something a lot harder than that, right? And what we know about the Western culture is doing hard things are always avoided. Doing harder, right things in long term that will, in the long term, benefit all collectively. That's anti-Western culture, which is selfish, short-term, individualistic, right? So this is the conundrum, right? Where it's like, and that's okay. It's kind of okay. That's not. It's never okay. It's wrong. It's the root of so much of the evil and problems and the oppression and suffering in the world, of everyone, including their own people, not just the African, Asian, Latin American, and our non-human relatives, that they keep causing to suffer and die. Their own people are suffering, right? But it's also like again, it will take, if you really want to make a change there, it was going to take something much more significant than an election. But a good chunk of these people don't want to even start talking about that. They want to believe in their elections, and their elite empower them. Yeah, these are really great elections we're having here. These European elections is really going to bring about change. That's why you spend so much time talking about elections in the West. Billions of dollars, right? The United States spends billions of dollars just talking about elections, right? All the U.S. is just like a long election cycle and punctuated by some wars, and then eat some McDonald's and watch some Disney movie about how those wars were awesome and great, and watch Captain Star Spangled Underpants some more, right? It's like Western culture is an infinite self-deception festival, right? Lying to yourself about how you're so democratic and so free and everything. We're so awesome, but you're the most over-policed, the most authoritarian places in the world. All your people are millions of people on the street. The people that are really ready to actually change things are out on the street, and your police are brutally beating them, suppressing their speech, right? That's not happening in China. That's not happening even in Russia in any significant way. That's not happening even in Iran. They're not having all these millions of people come out and then get beaten down, gassed, killed, shot, beaten up, censored, kicked off the internet, U.S. military personnel taken off of planes. They can't even fly. Pro-American U.S. military personnel trying to help Americans getting stopped from flying around, right? That only happens in the United States and the European and the West. You know, you're the most unfree place on this entire earth. You always have been. You know, you are the shacklers. You're not the liberators. You know, but they tell yourself, oh my God, we're so free right now. I'm so free right now. I can say whatever I want as long as I say exactly what my conservative or liberal politician who if I vote for them will change nothing says. As long as I say whatever they say, then me and my little small circle of little cowards that are increasingly freezing and starving in the dark as we run out of food and energy, and then cry about it, right? We cry about that and like, why is China solving climate change and feeding people? You know, why are you giving vaccines to deal with global pandemic? Why are you helping people, right? What, right? But you know, it's pathetic. It's just pathetic. You know, I don't know how else. It's like that's not even really being being hyperbolic. That's just it. That's just the truth. You know, and you have to accept that. That's what. If you can't accept that, you don't have a democracy. You can't accept that you don't have any human rights or freedom. If you can't accept, it's like alcohol. It's like Alcoholics Anonymous. It's like Western, dystopian, horrible, selfish, coward, planetary dumpster Anonymous. You know, but the thing is, the West used to be able to live higher on the hog by stealing from everybody else, but now they can't. The period in which everybody else was stomped down and locked in the West's basement for a while, right? But now, and they were weak, right? Africa, Asia, Latin America was weak because they were subjugated for a while. But now they're out of the basement. They were able to eat enough food to get strong enough, and now they're like, we're not going back in the basement. If you want to hurt yourself trying to stop the colonized people of Africa, Asia, Latin America, the global. If the West wants to try to stop the BRICS, if you want to try to stop the Russians, you want to try to stop, Africa, and you want to try to stop everyone else, you want to try to stop China, then you can feel free to hurt yourself, right? And they could try shooting, some kind of missile. I don't know if they're going to hit anything because they don't even know what the Russians have. The Russian, in all sense, nuclear and otherwise, they outmatch everything. It's all posturing, and it's really like, it's again. But the hardest part is like, how do you come to accept? It's as somebody as a culture, as a society that has been lying, that is rooted. It is like its central core again is self-deception and lying and imbibing and taking those lies and then making up lies on the fly to maintain. And it's so like lying comes so natural to the Western, especially Western man tongue, right? It's like I don't think they even realize what they're doing while they do it. They just do it. Like the big eyes guy. He didn't think about, okay, I'm gonna tell this lie. He just like lying on the spot, right? In order to preserve his own selfish prestige, fame, money, right? Lying about his own wife, right? And so it's so natural that it's almost like trying to stop how to not. You know, imagine you have like millions and then billions of people over 2 millennia constantly lying and committing violence and fraud and cheating and stealing and killing and doing all the greatest malice and oppression in the world, and then suddenly being told, okay, now you got to tell the truth. I don't think a lot of Westerners even know how to do that. The ones who do are the ones that are listening to, you know, the global South, like they're listening to Black and brown indigenous people and other people. And it's mostly the younger people, younger generation. I mean, one of the major hopes and one of the good things is that under the millennial and younger, especially generation, especially in the United States, less so unfortunately in Europe and in not United States, but younger population is starting to, you know, because they are like interacting with other people outside of Western culture to like learn, oh wow, we don't have to just lie all the time. We can like accept the truth of the horrors and malice that our ancestors have committed as white people, as Western people, and be like, that was terrible. And then like go, okay, well, let's not continue those, right? And also then, if you do that, then you could be, you know, that's Aaron Bushnell, and then because Aaron Bushnell talked a lot about Black liberation, Black Lives Matter, land back, indigenous people, you know, and so freeing Palestine. It wasn't just like, if you actually look at what he was writing, Aaron Bushnell wasn't just talking about. It's not just like a one issue thing. Again, like the white vegan guy's like, oh, I just don't want to hurt some animals, but no, I want to keep capitalism, imperialism, and slavery, and you know, sexual assault in place because, you know. I just tell people of color that, you know, the dairy farms do rape and slavery because that when you do that to cows, because, you know, it makes me feel better about all the sexual assault I've committed, and I like being a capitalist making tons of money with all these super oppressed soybean farmers in my vegan op that I have, and I don't want to give up. I don't want to do any work because I'm a selfish white man. And I want to make tons of money oppressing, you know, Thai and South American farmers, just like my Greek and Roman ancestors, while pretending to be a good person, because I'm selling soybeans, even though I actually eat meat, and I just say I only say I'm vegan when Black and brown people, tell me the truth about the entire world history, and how my people are actually at the root of all the oppression, including animals, and also of even white men like myself. But I don't want to face the fact that white men like myself oppress other white men like myself. So I'm just gonna make up some lies about, you know. So, but you know, if you are actually, that's why environmentalists. Well, I don't want to. I just want to say that Africa and China is bad because they're using a lot of industrial. They're putting out a lot of fossil fuel, and they're bad. And I don't have to change because, you know, South America, Central America, Africa, they gotta just not use resources because look. There's no resources, and look how dirty you are. You're all black and brown, and the Chinese, you have so many factories, and it's like, number one, like you have consumed the trillions and trillions, you know, of dollars. You consume 450 trillion worth of resources to build your tiny little now collapsing Brussels, your bikeable Berlins, and that are all falling apart. And now you're all using fossil fuel more, even while you're saying you're green. This is the nonsense. The U.S. is over investing in, you know. It's dairy. It's we got H5N1, you know, and like, you know, it's like, you know, where that is exactly, you know, they just came out with new reports. But, you know, the dairy industry, the cattle, your white capitalist cattle industry that runs all of that is what is making the possibility, you know, of new massive, you know, COVID scale pandemics, new ones, more likely, right? You're the ones that you're investing more in fossil fuel. You're talking about green energy. You're not investing anything in that. You're talking about China's doing all of it. China's doing all of it, and they're helping other countries get out from under. It's right, and it's like, but it's basically like, but, and then China's like, but what? But what? Like, get better. But the West is like, has to. That's why it always has to be like, China is solving problem X. China is curing diseases at what cost? China is solving diabetes at what cost? At the cost of a handful of 8 guys having a fucking toga party, having a Greco-Roman, British, French, Spanish, American toga party called a board meeting, right? At a healthcare corporation going, oh no, China cured diabetes. How are we going to make billions of dollars extorting people's life and well-being with the threat of, diabetic, ketoacidosis and death, right? By withholding their insulin if they don't pay us $400 a month. They have to drop it because their people are so broke now, right? It's pathetic. It's pathetic. The West is just an absolute nightmare place, and it's really sad. But the struggle, but again, all that it knows how to do is make up more lies about itself, right? Well, like one time, a Chinese solar panel might accidentally cause a Chinese solar panel accidentally might fall off a truck and land on a beetle or something, and that could extinct the beetle population. Some nonsense. I've seen stuff basically like that, right? Like, China is China's solar panels is cooling the earth, but it's but what if global warming causes heat deprived people in Africa to freeze? I've seen like the absolute, but that's Western culture, right? It just come up. It's the big eyes guy. Like, what's some absolute bullshit that I can come up with right now, right, on the fly, right? That's all you get paid for in the West, right? New York Times, Washington D.C., all your politicians, all your lawyers. That's all you do, right? Lawfare. It's not really. It's just crime defending, right? That's all what the West does, right? Well, I mean, you could ask, what if somebody gets vaccinated too hard and they could have suffered COVID-19, which might alleviate their mind. If you got long COVID, it could be good because you discover the joys of poverty. So China curing COVID, or China, speaking of to the anti-vax, right, that the U.S. propagated around the world, right? So if China cures COVID, if China cures COVID, or China cures this disease, like if China cures diabetes, people won't learn the joys of injecting themselves. What about they'll couch it in some kind of like pseudo left, Western fake left language, like what about all of the diversity of bodies that just like being stabbed with needles? Like this is it's anti pain culture, to cure diabetes, because some people just like stabbing themselves with needles. They'll come up with something, right? You've seen these articles, you've seen this rhetoric from Western people, Western Americans, especially liberals. The conservative is just like, well, China's bad because they're yellow, or China is a danger because we got to stop them because the Chi-Coms are coming. But the liberal propaganda, which is the most important one from the Western, that's the chief lie constructor, is something like that, right? China has artificial suns. China's overcapacity for this is like not anyway. How do you even say that? There's an overcapacity of solar, right? It's like right before that, right? So we're not making enough solar, right? Or is it like there's an Economist article that said China doesn't have enough. China is investing in technology and science, and but this will certainly backfire. And then like 6 months later, China is a technological superpower, right? It's got like the world's best quantum computers, right? They got like the Chinese community college mathematicians apparently are beating the greatest Harvard, the greatest elite Mayo, the Mensa Club, the best American and Western mathematicians are being beat by like random community college students in China. They have China already had more honor students than America had students 10 years ago. Now it's like twice or 3 times that, right? If America has any schools left that aren't being taught by shrimp Jesus, crab Jesus, spaghetti, put gasoline on your spaghetti, Gemini AI, right? If there are any schools that are teaching anything left in the West that is worth worth anything, uh, they're all being all competed, right? And like, what you should, obviously the solution is like stop lying, stop doubling down on your nonsense, accept the true history. This is accept the true history of the world in which you have been the great, the overwhelming evil and malice and oppression in your culture. Not you specifically, personally, but as a Western, white, European, colonial, imperial system and culture, selfish individual, all of it together, Christendom, all of that. You have to accept all of that, and then to get to the point, just to even start to try to change the downward spiral that the United States and the collective West is going into, we will have to accept that, right? It's like accepting that you have a problem is the hardest part. Again, like the Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's we can just hope that enough of the younger generation will continue to move away from that. Like having access to TikTok, it does help because you can see lots of the young people are not growing up in the insulated, right, enclave of, when I was growing up, we had Star Wars, which is all white people as the protagonist. We had all Western musicians. Good musicians. I listened to Smashing Pumpkins. We had Nirvana. This isn't even the 90s, right? But it's all Western music. It's all Western culture. It's all Western people. We're relating to Western people inside of our suburb, inside of our neighborhood, inside your city. But it's basically all Western, right? But with the internet is actually a great way to interconnect people across the planet, so that the average young person now in the West, even in the West too, is at least has access to and is encountering, like, our kids are super into K-pop right now. Like, our kid likes the Stray Kids a lot. But you have Chinese, there's not as much Chinese. Well, it's actually a lot of it is Chinese, but they just have somebody come and stamp over Korean and Japanese labels, in fact. But you have Asians in music. You have a lot of diversity in the movies, and not just in, like, you can see a movie with black and brown and Asian people in it. You can see Wandering Earth, and Everything Everywhere was made in the United States, but it's international collaboration. There's a lot more, there's a lot more diversity. You can see a lot more perspectives. You can follow people in the Middle East, in Asia, all over Asia. You can follow people in Africa, right? You can see what they're doing culturally, their social media posts, right? And young people are growing up like with that access, right? And that's part of why they're in a different place than their parents were, or even my generation is, right? And so that's a positive thing. And the hardest part is, it's like the people currently in power, that's the Gen X and older, because they grew up in a culture that was the most insulated. It was most insulated, and it was during the Cold War, and or it was in the unipolar American hegemonic Western, the peak of Western hegemony, Western power, and or the Cold War, which was a height of anti-East and jingoistic, pro-capitalistic, pro-Americanism, right, of the 20th century. So that's some of the worst brainworms you can have. It's the planetary superpowered moment of the Greek, Roman, British, French, Western project, and so that's going to be hard to deal with. But we have to just try. You have to do our best, and have to interrogate. And sometimes you have to address. You have to deal with some of these hard truths, hard to accept. But they have to be accepted because if you don't learn the lessons, if you don't even know what is on the ground on the battlefield, right? To take a military analogy. If you don't even know what the situational awareness, if you don't even have any intelligence of what is on the battlefield, you can't possibly win a struggle. And I'm not saying that like there has to be a civil war in the United States, but like if you want to win a struggle against the systems of oppression and this systems of disinformation and lies and the culture, it's a cultural, it's social, It's economic, it's political. If you want to win against that, you have to understand what you're even dealing with. And you can't begin to understand what you're dealing with if you are not able to accept this, right? Accept the problems of your own system that it has vested interest in keeping you in the dark about. So, yeah, and I think is that all I wanted to say? That's basically all I want to say. It's 1:15. So yeah, look forward to look forward to the end of Western. We look forward to the end of Western Domination. Like learning from other. I mean, I'm just one random channel, but there's lots of other channels out there to learn about. To learn from. Black Power Media is one. Red Nation is another indigenous Native American run YouTube channel, and Aina Momona is an organization, a Native Hawaiian organization, because I am a Native Hawaiian. So if you want to learn more about our anti-imperial, anti-capitalist, anti-colonial struggles, that's another one that you can check out. And so don't forget, everything we do here is supported by direct support through Ko-Fi. If you would like to just give us a tip one time, you can do that at the Ko-Fi page at ko-fi.com/silverspook. Every dollar does go to help us out to keep doing these streams and doing the education and finishing games like Neofeud. You can also support us through Patreon at patreon.com/Neofeud, where you can get access to behind the scenes of what we're working on. You can support us in an ongoing way, and you can also so here's like some of the stuff that we're working on and updates on international events we're doing. Neofeud 2, obviously I'm still working on, very close to being done with. I just finished another scene this week. So yeah, so if you want to see all that, you can also get Silverspook Discord access and the Silverspook University, which is all the content I have produced categorized according to topic. Another perk of becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/Neofeud. You can also get Neofeud, which is a cyberpunk, retro 90s style adventure game that I do music, art, writing, programming, and half the voice acting on.
The Illuminati created us. They wanted to build a god with their own hands, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
And it's also
That's
a game that
reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
When people are looking for games to get. You can also get Neofeud on itch.io for Windows and for Mac and for Linux if you would like to get it there. It's also a game that is maximum revenue comes to us when you get it there. And then there's, of course, several other games like Decolonators and Indigistar, Pigeon with Gun. Woman is a book by Holly, who was raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity. And it's not a historical retelling, but a work of fiction that is from the perspective of Mary from the Bible. That is about critiquing this culture, and it's free, or you can donate some when you pick it up. You can also follow at Silverspook Games at Silverspook Games at Octodon.social, at Silverspook Games at Mastodon.social on Mastodon, at Silverspook Guy on Twitter, and at Silverspook Games minus the E and Silver for the games related stuff on the Twitter. Terminator Cyberstar is a low poly cyberpunk RPG. I'm the content director and lead writer of, and this game is also coming sometime soon, I believe. Holly is, of course, the Tech Fairy, our fantastic moderator, septum ring, green hair, and tattoos haver. For free, the Watermelon Place, Free Hawaii, and more. Massive public, queer, married to myself, married, parent of 2, and writer for the Kate Nix Music and Variety Show. And thank you to all the people on this list for your support. Massively appreciated. Without your support, it does become very difficult for us to keep doing this work. So thank you very much to all of our ongoing gracious patrons for all of that help. And until next time, just don't forget to let's try to accept what we're accept that this is coming down, and wherever you are at, and prepare for the multipolar world that we will all be entering, whether you like it or not. Okay.